Hi, this is Nikki Devon, and I'm here for a second time today, but this time with Laura Gutierrez, Artistic Director for Outsider Fest, Associate Professor in Latinx Studies in the College of Liberal Arts, and Associate Dean in the College of Fine Arts at the University of Texas, for a special bonus episode sponsored by Tecovas called Walk a Mile in Their Boots. It's Wednesday, March 19th. I'm Nikki Devon, and this is what Austin's talking about. Hi, Laura. How are you?
Hi, Nikki. I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to have you on. I have heard so much about you, so I'm really excited to get in there and know you a little better. You have a lot of different hats. Can you tell me why, in totality, your work matters in Austin?
My work, I think, matters first and foremost because of, I think, what you mentioned earlier, the fact that I'm able to have a research practice that allows me to be beyond the walls of the university confines and allows me to be very much engaged with what's going on in the local scene, particularly in the arts scene, of course. I'm an associate professor of Latinx studies, and specifically in Latinx studies, I focus on aesthetics.
I love that.
I'm able to use a lot of my research and my knowledge on that to be able to work and collaborate and partner with different art organizations. And then with one of them in particular, to have a leadership position that allows us to showcase, cutting edge art in Austin through Outsider Fest.
I love that you use the word aesthetic because it immediately brings things to mind for me. But it also sounds like you are just creating visibility for the Latinx community across many, like a multitude of platforms and places in the city, which is huge because we do sometimes worry about our city losing its diversity. What should Austinites know when it comes to Latinx art in Texas?
Texas is huge. So, in terms of just geographically, there's a lot for us to sort of think about, like the regional differences within the state of Texas. Latinx art is not going to look the same in northern Texas as it is, bordering with Oklahoma. So you might have sort of a different sensibility, whereas in the valley, it's, of course, because of the proximity to Mexico, it's going to look different. As the further you get towards the western part of Texas, the desert landscape is going to also affect the way that people are engaging with the sources around them to be able to create new artistic, output. And then, of course, here in Austin, what I love about being here, in relationship to art and aesthetics in general, it's the depth of the history. I mean, people have been manufacturing art for hundreds of years within Texas through what we now call Latinx aesthetics, right? But they've been doing it without that name specifically, right? So knowing the history of Austin in terms of that has been really amazing for me to learn. And then also to see Austin as a hub for original work and the ways in which the different communities come together to support each other's work, gallery openings, for example, or exhibits at different museums. I run into overlapping communities and I see how the ways in which they support what they're doing right now, right?
So tell us about Outsider Fest. What is it? If in case there's someone listening that has no idea what it is.
It's an annual festival that takes place here in Austin, usually the third week of February. And it is a queer trans media arts festival that showcases cutting edge work, meaning work that might not necessarily be showcased in the more mainstream platforms. It is, out of the box or risky, and we offer the opportunity for these artists to showcase their work. It's, a queer and trans festival. That's what we do primarily, but it's also very BIPOC. like meaning that, artists of color are very much given the opportunity to be at the front of
Yeah.
that festival.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You've been involved since the very beginning, which is 2014. What was it like then in comparison to what it is now?
Some things have changed. To name one of the obvious things, leadership. I am now the artistic director of Outsider Fest and have been working in the last 4 years or so as part of the programming team, meaning curating the festival. But I'm not the founder of Outsider Fest. The founder of Outsider Fest is Curran Alt, with Curran and fellow, sort of a group of artists, event programmers, people who had a different vision of something that was lacking in Austin in terms of the queer arts and performance, to highlight that, but not to stay sort of in a single lane. We're not going to do another film festival because there's already a film festival that features, the LGBT community. It was about mixing the different disciplines under the large rubric of queer and trans art. And that vision, I think, is what started Outsider Fest and made it unique, right? As it offered a possibility for different disciplines to come together. And then, of course, enables different people, different type of artists to come together annually, right? I became involved early on in 2014 through the Conference on the Couch. The Conference on the Couch is part of the festival where artists, activists, academics come together literally around a couch or a set of couches to have conversations around different sets of issues affecting our communities. So it's sort of a way to take academia outside of academia and also give the opportunity for people to access these types of conversations, but they're not academic, in sort of like a high kind of, academic sense. They're also about accessibility to ideas and also making sure that people understand that, wait, academics are not the owners of knowledge,
Ooh, yes.
that
Okay.
it's every knowledge is for
Yeah.
everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I first got involved when I was asked to moderate one of these sessions. I also want to mention that another change that needs to be accounted for are demographics, meaning age wise, demographics in terms of age. I'm getting older, 10 years is a long time, right? So it's also the sense of like, am I keeping up with what the young kids, the kids are
Yeah.
doing,
Yeah.
and it's like, I'm not. Often I am not, it's hard,
You can't do it
when
all. Can't be everywhere.
exactly, yeah. But also, one significant way in which, because of time, how Outsider has changed, it has to do with the ways in which we, some of us in the organization are growing older, and then we're bringing in younger people, right? So that's also going to change, right? The associate artistic director that joined me this year is Lauren Yap, who is in their 20s and is Filipinic, so it's like bringing a
Yes.
bringing a
Yeah.
different lens to that, well, to that as well, right? So we
Love it.
complement each other through our different lenses, including age difference.
How has the festival changed over the past decade as queerness has become more mainstream? You know what I mean? Like, are we still outsiders? I think we're still outsiders for sure. But I'm curious as to, like, as you've seen the festival change, what has changed in the offerings? What are people bringing? Like, how have things changed in that way?
Yes, well, there has been a growth in mainstream culture to quote unquote accept queer and trans artists and art in general. We know politically that is not the case, right? In fact, the very same visibility that through mainstream culture is one of the reasons I think we're experiencing a very serious backlash
Yes.
politically, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
how do we become attentive to that kind of like very, it's a conundrum. It's like there are more representations out there at the same time that we're being attacked. It's like the more representation sort of almost I'm not a scientist, and I don't mean to, sort of think of this in a sort of in a scientific way, but the more the more visibility allows for more attacks, which is
Yeah, it's the
horrible,
larger the
right?
target. It makes the target larger. Yeah, it
Yeah,
expands our
yeah,
target.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Outsider is still interested in what mainstream culture is not interested in, like really thinking about, the misfits, the freaks. I still think that there's a
Yes.
lot of outsiders outside of mainstream culture where mainstream culture would not be able to deal with the types of performances that we have featured throughout the years. In February, our closing performance was an artistic collaboration between three artists. And this last year was about monstrosity. They brought their freakness, to the fore
Yeah.
and highlighted that. And, it's not necessarily about, explicit in terms of like nudity. That's not what we're doing, right? That's not what we mean by risky. What we mean is by the topics that they're addressing through their freakness, right? Which has a lot to do with historical erasure, that has to do with mainstream co-optation of queerness. These artists are pushing against that, right? So that's what we like to feature in at Outsider, because not all queers and trans are co-optable or palatable for mainstream culture.
So, okay, I want to talk a little bit about you. Let's walk a mile in your boots. What does a regular day look like? Or like a regular day in Austin, what does that look like for you?
I love to start my days, with my very strong cup of coffee. Like that's my first thing to go, right? To be able to do what I do, I'm like I need to start off with coffee, right? So and then, depending on my schedule at the university, I either go into the office and just attend meetings or attend to the work that needs to be done. A lot of it is meeting with students. Students are also another one of my, important ways in which I do the work that I do. It's another one of my communities in the sense that I need to also nurture, right? So I have meetings with my students. I work with a lot of grad students and supervise their dissertation projects, for example. So they need me, so I'm there for them. What might look different is the days that I actually are there. I'm actually in the classroom, so I might spend time prepping for class and going into the classroom to teach. But what I prefer to say is that I facilitate important conversations around the readings that we do or whatever material we're covering.
I love this. I love
And to
this.
me, those are my teaching days are the days that make sense to me and ground me because I'm in a space, in the classroom space where we're talking about ideas. And that is one of my passions to talk to people about ideas, deep thoughts about the theory that we're
Everything.
reading, for example, and everything. And how,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
This has been all over the internet recently. And so I have to ask you because now I've become obsessed with it. I've been seeing a lot of saying that rest is resistance or rest is revolutionary. So I'm curious, as someone doing this work, as someone who is a queer brown woman, how do you rest? What do you do for rest in Austin? How do you turn off? What kind of things do you get into in Austin, in the city that's restful?
I love to walk, and I walk mostly alone, but sometimes with friends. And if there's a path by a river, that's my to-go place, right? So that's what I do. I also turn off by just sitting in the couch and telling myself rest time is resistance. It's not a good feeling. And, a lot of this we have learned from, Black feminist scholars and creatives and activists. They are at the forefront of this, what we might want to say, movement that rest is resistance, and to get out of the idea that productivity is everything, because that's what capitalism has insisted that we do. produce, produce, produce. And it's like, no, we're just feeding the machine, and the machine has no interest in my well being.
Right.
So let me remind myself that I am not going to continue feeding the machine. I do what I need to do, and I feel good about the work that I do, but also I'm not going 100 or over 100% all the time.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add about Outsider Fest or like the work that you do in the city? Actually, really anything that I did not ask you?
I would just say that, as someone that did not grow up in Austin or in Texas, I grew up in Chicago. I'm a migrant from Mexico to Chicago.
Love
So
Chicago.
yeah, so that's home for me in many ways. But now that I've been here 11 years, I was like, wait, no, Laura, you're like, Austin is home. And it's been good to be here, during these last 11 years now. I think that Austin, or even Texas as a whole, is actually a very special place
Yeah.
that I now, that when people snub Texas for whatever it is, it's like, whether it's its politics or, people, it's quote unquote backwardness, it's like, you all don't know what you're missing, right? Because it's actually a very special place. And I didn't see that, I admit, when I first got here, but I have grown to love it.
It's hard. You have to be in it. You have to be in Texas to like see the different people and see the beauty in it. And I always tell people that Texas is like that cousin. I can talk shit about that cousin, but nobody else can talk shit about that cousin. I get real mad about it. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, Texas is it is a hard place to find sometimes
Hmm. Hmm.
beauty and love, but it's everywhere. It's especially, start in Austin. Start
Yeah.
here. It's
Hmm.
the best place to
No.
start. Laura, thank you so much for being here with me and talking to me about Outsider Fest and just like the things that you love and letting us walk a mile in your boots. I really, really appreciate it. This has been great.
No, I really appreciate it. And appreciate you and the invitation to be here, and yeah, share some time with you, spend time, yeah, on the mic.
Laura, thanks for joining us on this special episode of CityCast Austin, sponsored by Tecovas. We'll have a link to their Austin stores in our show notes.